Hello and welcome back to the Argyle CISO Leadership Forum. My name is Vicki Lynn Brunskill with Argyle. It's great to have everyone joining us today. Just a couple of notes before I turn things over to our esteemed speaker for this session. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during the event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience today at any time during today's event. You can visit those virtual booths from the main agenda page. Also, to ask questions throughout this session, simply type into the Q&A chat and we will address your questions at the end of the session. And now, without further delay, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Alex Reed, Product Architect, 1111 Systems. We are so excited to have Alex with us for a thought leadership presentation titled End-to-End Cloud Security Strategies for a Resilient Infrastructure. Welcome, Alex. Over to you.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Vicki. Hey, good morning, afternoon, or evening, everyone, depending on when you're tuning in to watch this. Like Vicki was saying, my name is Alex. I am Product Architect with 1111 Systems. What we're going to go over today is a kind of an end-to-end approach to cloud security. And when I say end-to-end, what I really mean is that I am here from a cloud service provider, which means that I kind of have a 30,000-foot view of a lot of the security concepts that we'll go through. And really what I'm trying to do is communicate some of the challenges that the security industry is facing, some of the rationale for the ways that we develop products, and how you can use that information to build your own security practice. So a little bit about myself before we get started. Like Vicki said, my name is Alex, Product Architect at 1111 Systems. What the title means really is just that I serve as a technical backstop for my product manager. So I work to translate business requirements into technical requirements that the engineering team can use to develop their solutions. And then vice versa, if we have any technical requirements from the engineers that need to make it into the business requirements, make sure that those make it into the product design documentation. I've been working in IT for over a decade. I've been working and getting into trouble with computers for much longer than that. Since I was very young, I've been very interested in computers and security. And I've been a bit of a paranoiac, as my bio suggests. I've worked through roles in cloud service providers in a variety of different situations. I've been in operations, I've been in product development, sales engineering. So I've kind of done a rotation in the trenches, and I kind of understand a lot of the challenges that folks face, both selling and then also developing and delivering security products. So today, what I'd like to talk through is what we mean when we talk about cloud security, some of the different use cases that we can implement to make our cloud practice more secure. And we're going to talk through some terminology where, if you have taken any AWS or Azure training, you'll have heard before security of the cloud versus security in the cloud. And that's just a way for us to scope out what we're actually responsible for. And when I say we, I mean either the CSP or the tenant. We'll talk through what that means for how we have to design our security practice and the problems that it presents for us to solve with our security practice. And then we will talk through some integrations that we need to make sure work in order to deliver that. So we'll present those problems and we'll get an understanding of what we need to solve. And then we'll talk through the way that we solve them. So one of the things that you'll hear me talk about a lot is a SOC, or Security Operations Center. We'll get more into that later. And some of the things such as alert fatigue that SOCs have historically and are currently having trouble with. And then some of the ways that AI can help us solve those problems. And what I'll say up front is that this is not going to be an AI shill presentation. I'm not going to tell you that AI is going to solve all your problems. In fact, quite the opposite. What I'm trying to do is narrow our scope down for problems that we're trying to solve until we get to a point where SOC actually does make sense to implement, and an AI makes sense to implement within a SOC. So to start just getting all on the same page about cloud security, I'm a big believer in level setting. So what I'd like to do is just make sure we're all kind of using the same words to talk about these problems that we're trying to solve. Because I think we all, as tech professionals, have a good sense of where these problems are coming from, but we need to be able to talk about them using the same language. And I'm going to try and standardize on some industry standard language here. So when we talk about of the cloud versus in the cloud, again, if you've gone through big cloud provider training, you'll have heard this 50 billion times. But the main reason that we do this is, again, to scope down exactly what our responsibilities are. So As a cloud provider, 1111 is focused on security by design of the solution. And we usually implement that via guardrails or policy enforcement. So when we present the solution to the customer, you'll see certain things are out of bounds. You'll only see certain things in the interface, et cetera, et cetera. Versus if you are setting something up from scratch, for instance, deploying a router or a switch, and you just have full admin access to the entire platform. Generally, we will design things so that only the things that you as the tenant have access to are the things that you can secure yourself, versus anything that we're responsible for, we take care of behind the scenes, behind the curtain. For us to be able to diagnose these things, we need to be uh, we need to be able to see into that environment. So that usually requires some kind of agent or appliance. So when we think about EDR, which is one of the current marketing buzzwords, endpoint disaster and response, endpoint detection and response, that's usually delivered by an agent. And then vulnerability scanning usually requires some kind of an appliance being deployed inside the environment. So these kind of describe two different approaches that you can take to make sure that your cloud practice is appropriately scoped. And for us in this talk, we're going to be mostly focusing on in the cloud, because as a tenant, you can't really design your practice around of the cloud. You really just kind of have to obey the rules that the cloud provider sets down. So yeah, in the cloud is going to be our focus today. Some key terms to get us started. And I'm just going to toggle my audio every couple of seconds to make sure y'all can. To get us started are going to be first a vulnerability. When we talk through what a vulnerability means, this is kind of our building block of making sure security practice is appropriate, right? Anything that can be exploited to allow unauthorized access or data loss is going to be what we call a vulnerability, right? And we see new vulnerabilities come up all the time. That's going to be another point I harp on during this talk, is that vulnerabilities are constantly coming up, even in places that we thought were pretty bulletproof. A risk, as we define it, is going to be an unrealized vulnerability or potential issues that we've not accounted for. So some examples of a vulnerability might be an unpatched server, or if you have RDP exposed on an external IP, if you have an unlocked door in your office. These are things that could pose a vulnerability, right? Because that's something that an attacker could take advantage of in order to gain unauthorized access. However, a risk might be something more like a data center without redundant power, or missing a DR plan for a certain piece of infrastructure or equipment, because those things, they may not be a vulnerability as such. They may not be able to be exploited in that way. But if a disaster were to hit, or if something else were to happen, they could result in lost data, lost business, or any other variety of consequences. So together, your vulnerabilities and your risks make up your attack surface. So all of your risks and vulnerabilities, and that's just a phrase that we use in the security community to illustrate that it's a continuous surface, and the more stuff you have, the bigger the surface is, and the harder it is to cover all of that surface with a security product. And one important thing to note is that risk and vulnerability aspect of your environment can be quantified. It's a little dodgy, but we are still working on some of the methodologies for that. But in the most recent NIST cloud security framework, risk quantification is a very, very important part of governance for your entire organization. So it's important to understand that risk scores or risk quantification is just a way for us to take those risks and communicate to executives, stakeholders, anybody else in the company, how important those risks are to remediate or to de-risk, as a phrase. So all of these things also inform your security posture, which is another phrase that I really like, because if you're anything like me, I have terrible posture. I slouch all the time. I've been playing video games for too long, and that's in order to have good posture. I have to remind myself all the time to lift my chin up, lift my shoulders up, sit back. And your security posture is treated very much the same way. And that if you start slouching at all, if you stop considering your risks and vulnerabilities, you open yourself up to attack pretty immediately. So it's a continuous, and I'm going to touch on this in a moment too. It's a continuous reevaluation of what your risks and vulnerabilities are. And all of this should come together into a SOC, or Security Operations Center, which is an independent silo in your organization, which is going to be responsible for managing and monitoring all of your security solutions. So that's when I talk about a SOC, not only am I talking about the Operations Center itself, or the people and analysts that staff it, but I'm also talking about the methodology that we use. So let's talk a little bit more about that methodology. When we're designing our security practice, and I'm calling it a security practice here, note, instead of a security solution. And that's because, in other words, you can use for it as a process, right? It's never done, it's never finished. You would never say, okay, I've installed all the solutions that I need to, so I'm done. You should always be constantly reevaluating everything about your security posture and everything, all of your solutions that you're using. One of the big reasons for that is that new attack vectors, as we said earlier, are emerging every day. When, to the extent that, on the nation state level of exploits, we have entire office buildings filled with security professionals that, people will put on a suit and carry a briefcase and walk into the office, get paid a salary to try to find new exploits and new methods of hacking critical infrastructure or businesses. So it is a big problem. There is a lot of money going into finding new attack vectors every single day. And for that reason, we need to be constantly updating where we're getting our information on how to cover our vulnerabilities. So a SOC should embody that principle. Your SOC should be constantly getting new information, and that's how it differentiates itself from what you would call legacy security solutions. So you're not just installing antivirus in all of your and now I'm secure, and you're not just implementing a password rotation policy, which, as a sidebar, is bad. Don't do password rotation. Check NIST if you disagree with that. But a SOC should embody that principle of continuously reevaluating your position. And another thing that it should do, any security solution should integrate with your cloud services. And when I say integrate, I don't mean just be visible. I mean bidirectional communication between your security solution and your cloud service. And that's all of your cloud services, right? So if you subscribe to IaaS or platform as a service, that's inside the operating system via agents, vulnerability scanning appliances like we discussed earlier. With public cloud, that's going to be API-driven automation and visibility. So with public cloud, it's not sufficient to have somebody coming in and clicking buttons every time you need to do things. The pure scale under which a public cloud operates means you have to be doing things programmatically. And then backup and disaster recovery as a service. There are new innovations coming through pretty much every quarter from backup and DR providers. A good example for us is Veeam enables us to do anomaly detection on backups and VM images, both locally on premise and on the service provider side. What that means is that we're able to give SOC analysts, either whether they're our analysts or analysts for a company, better information to start hunting threats with when we detect something wrong with those backups. So we've established kind of the what the problems look like with developing a security practice, and we've established that the way that we should be moving forward with solving those problems. So now we have to do a little bit of problem solving inception, because we standing up a SOC isn't free, and there are still extant problems to solve in rolling out a SOC. So what we've seen, and this is our experience both rolling out a SOC ourselves and serving customers who have rolled out their own SOC, is that the market for creating an organization like this faces a few different consistent challenges. And these are very consistent across everything that we've seen. We see, first off, is alert fatigue, which is a phrase you may have heard elsewhere in the security org. So basically, if you have a central logging system, such as a SIEM, or security information and event management system, that's very good and that's very important for modern security. However, now that we have this giant data lake, what's happening is that analysts are completely overwhelmed and inundated with this huge amount of not just information, but also false positive alerts. And we're seeing, it's on the order of hundreds to thousands of alerts per day that analysts are having to slog through in order to figure out which ones are correct and which ones are just noise. And it's impossible. Unfortunately, we can't filter all of that from the very beginning. We can't just from the start filter out those 99% of false positives, because we do have to have a baseline of normalcy to understand what is abnormal or anomalous, right? So we have to have the system working for a while in conditions that we know are good in order to figure out when conditions are bad. And that contributes to alert fatigue as well, because in the meantime, we're just getting flooded with alerts and we're not able to chunk through all of them in a timely or efficient manner. And we're also getting hit with disparate data sources. What I mean by that is that not all logs are created equal. Some logs are very readable and it's very easy to figure out what's going on. Some, if you've ever debugged a Java error and had to face down a completely unreadable error message, some logs are like that. Sometimes you get a pop-up for an alert and you just cannot figure out what's going on. So not all logs are created equal, even with database management features that a lot of SIEMs have. Parsing logs manually is just not viable. So if we think back to our Veeam example from earlier, where we have anomaly detection coming in, that's an example of getting good baseline readings from an environment that gives SOC analysts another reliable metric to key on versus having to create their own. We also have constantly shifting new attack methods. I've said it like 4 or 5 times. I'll say it again. New attack vectors are coming in every day. We cannot predict where they're going to come in or how fast they're going to come in. They just do. It's a consequence of how complicated all of our networks and systems are these days that we just can't keep a good thumb on where those vulnerabilities are coming from. But it's far too many for any one analyst or team of analysts to keep track of by themselves. And then this all contributes to a talent shortage, right? I think anyone who's worked in security is also aware of this. Too many job openings just means that we have a lot of positions that are going unfilled. And that also means that security folks are being asked to do less with more, or more with less. So they're getting more data and more alerts, but they have fewer analysts and less time to deal with them. So the way that this informs our security solution design, then, if we're designing our own internal security practice, or we're standing up a SOC ourselves, or we are offloading this to a third-party SOC, no matter where that SOC is coming from, we have to be able to solve those problems, and in order for the SOC to actually work. And it can't be solved just by throwing more analysts at the problem. There's a scaling problem there. Even with best of breed solutions, the platform's growth is going to outpace the ability of the analyst team to onboard and educate new members. Onboarding time for a new SOC analyst is anywhere between 3 to 9 months. And if your solution is growing at any kind of rate, that is not going to be sufficient. You're instantly going to be overwhelmed with the number of analysts that you have. And even if you add more analysts, you can't really predict well how fast your solution is going to grow or how fast your needs are going to grow. So that means that we have to have a design that solves that headcount issue. At the same time, we can't just remove the analyst from the system. The analyst serves a crucial role, especially in terms of human decision making, right? So we can't just funnel this all into a machine learning or AI solution, because we can't rely on those things for business critical decisions. We're talking about potentially freezing or shutting down business critical servers during high traffic times if a breach is occurring, in order to minimize damage, which is a very difficult decision to make and probably not one that you'd want to leave up to a machine learning platform. So to that end, the synthesis of all of this, when we bring all these ideas together, we see that AI can be used not as a force multiplier. So the way it solves these problems is that, let's go through them piece by piece, those problems I just mentioned. It solves alert fatigue by providing better alerts to analysts. So what I mean by that is that because of all those false positives coming in, analysts are overwhelmed. AI platforms can use false positives by up to 90% in some cases. And any reduction in false positives, as any win, any amount of positives not making it into your alert stream is going to significantly reduce your alert fatigue. And in order to solve disparate data sources, we provide smarter alerts. So a machine learning model can correlate specific data points across time. That's one of the primary things that they do, and much larger data sets than a human can in a very short period of time, which means that we can use these models to recognize anomalous behavior and correlate events from many disparate platforms without having to have a human understand how all those platforms relate to each other or the differences in logging between those platforms. So that's a huge reduction in the amount of time that analysts have to spend sitting at a desk and chugging through trivial alerts. This next point, I have more intelligent alerts, and the way I differentiate that from smarter alerts is just to say that utilizes threat intelligence feeds. So we cannot just plug a human into a threat intelligence feed and have that human understand all the new threats and attack vectors that are occurring on a day-to-day basis. We can do that with the machine learning platform. What that means is that as soon as that information is plugged into that platform, the machine learning model is able to apply those new threats and signatures of those threats to the way that it is providing alerts to the analyst. So it's a seamless way of integrating those intelligence feeds, which are a huge, incredible resource from a lot of security research facilities. Fortinet has them, Trend has them. All of those security vendors coming together and giving us information is a huge empowerment to the analysts. And those things together let a smaller team of analysts do more with less. They mitigate that talent shortage by allowing a smaller team to significantly impact a larger organization. So to wrap things up, I like to wrap up with just the exact same screen or the exact same slide that I started with. So it's what we talked through is relating cloud security to SOC and AI. We challenges of designing a secure cloud platform versus living in a secure cloud platform, and how those two things kind of divide responsibility between the service provider and the tenant. We talked through designing a security practice versus a security solution, right? So if you are a tenant inside of a cloud provider, you trust that the cloud provider says what they're going to do, but then you also must perform all of the responsibilities that are shifted to you as part of the in the cloud piece. And that the main way of solving that these days, the best way, is by implementing a SOC or security operations center. We also discussed how that has to tie in with your cloud services and integrate, not just on a visibility layer, but have bidirectional communication between the security services and your SOC, or the cloud services in your SOC. Then we talked through SOC as a solution to those problems and the problems that SOCs themselves face, or the challenges that you can have in standing up your own security operations center, or implementing a third-party security operations center. So we talked through alert fatigue and some of those similar and related issues, disparate data sources, new attack methods, all that kind of stuff. And then we illustrated AI as a force multiplier, not as the set it and forget it solution, but as a way to enable analysts to do more with less and actually deliver a high quality security service on a lower budget. So that's it for me today. And I'm happy to transition over to the Q&A session in just a second. I am from 1111 Systems. If you'd like to know more about what we talked through today, proactive security, cloud services, anything like that, you can scan our QR code here, or you can go to this URL. You can download this white paper. We have a lot of this kind of stuff, how we fit into the picture, how other providers fit into the picture, and how we can deliver to you the highest quality security services. So I'm happy to hop over. I have some questions here that I will go ahead and read. Ones of having an internal SOC versus managed SOC services. That is an excellent question. With an internal SOC, you are going to have complete control over the methodology of how they solve problems. You're going to be able to dictate pretty much start to finish how that SOC operates. And you're also going to be able to custom build any tooling that you need to allow the SOC access into your environment. You're not going to have, really the problem of ticket wait times or, any of that other stuff with third-party SOCs. However, it is a significant investment. There is a lot of overhead in implementing a SOC. A proper SOC will have a SOAR platform, which is security orchestration automation platform. So that's a significant investment altogether. And then there's just upskilling and onboarding, where if you don't already have a security practice internal to your company, hiring folks to do security is expensive and time consuming. So the primary thing that you gain by going with managed SOC services, you don't have to do that upfront investment. You can just buy something off the shelf. You can make sure that the SLAs and SLOs line up with whatever you need to deliver, and then you can call it done and just rely on the contract from there. I see. What are the primary components of a SOC for an organization in the cloud? So SOC will generally have, like I said, it'll have a SOAR platform, security organization, and auto. You'll generally have at least one or more analysts, and then you'll have some kind of management that will handle communication with stakeholders internally. So the most bare bones SOC is usually actually more software than people. But it all kind of depends on the skill set of the people that you have staffing that SOC. So the other important thing is making sure that the SOC has the autonomy to perform their functions without being limited by the standards or practices that other departments are held to. You're going to need to kind of have a little bit more integration into certain parts of your business. SOC just works a little fundamentally differently from even like a NOC, although the structure and kind of methodology are very similar. A SOC is just going to, really just require a security analyst themselves and then a couple of pieces of software to enable that. From that point forward, really, it depends entirely on what your organization's needs are, which is one of the reasons why, going with a managed SOC service is good, as long as they can cover whatever your use cases are. And then the last question I can get is, what does threat hunting mean in a SOC? How is it different from threat intelligence? So threat hunting is an active process where an analyst will receive an alert and then validate that alert, and then finally troll through whatever logs and information they have available to them to try to figure out why that alert is coming in, what's causing it, and if there are any actual threats that are present in the environment, or if it's just somebody is actually on a trip to China and logged in today. That could be a very, not a false positive, because that was a real alert. Ordinarily, you would flag on somebody from out of the country trying to log into critical infrastructure. But if it is somebody who's actually in China and actually logging in, then that was a good thing to catch. So threat hunting, threat intelligence is a passive process where we are pulling information in from external feeds. Security research organizations, your Fortinets, your Trend Micros, and giving us better resources to perform threat hunting with. So great questions today. Thanks so much, everybody. I will pass it back over to Vicky. That's all for me.
Thank you so much, Alex. What an incredible thought leadership presentation. Super practical and timely, of course. I want to thank everyone for joining us for this session. And this session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. And as a reminder, please do check out the prizes and raffle rules section to see how you can earn points for the chance to win one of several prizes. Our next session will begin after a short break at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and that'll be a keynote presentation titled Embedding Cybersecurity Visibility and Enforcement in the Cloud. Please click the join button that will appear on your screen to be redirected to that session after the break, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you again, Alex.
Thank you.